Have you ever received a gift from your best friend and felt afraid? Have you ever been around someone for so long that you start to wonder, are we sharing feelings or sharing bodies? In today's episode of True Reddit Stories, you'll hear one of the most disturbing friendship tales ever posted, a toxic bond so intense. What she wanted wasn't your time, wasn't your love. She wanted your skin, a secret cult, a twisted belief system, and a list of people who never made it out. You think you're living in your own body? This story will make you question that for the rest of your life. Chapter 1: Blood and a Childhood Oath. I met Dia when I was 7 years old, on a sweltering summer day when she moved into the house next door. Her arms were covered in raw red patches of eczema, like someone had taken sandpaper to her skin. But she didn't seem embarrassed or uncomfortable at all. On the contrary, Dia walked straight up to me, held out her hand with a beaming smile, and said something I still remember vividly. To this day, we're going to be best friends forever. Before I could even react, Dia scratched her own arm. Blood welled up. Then she grabbed my wrist, pulled me closer, and pressed our wounds together. Now our blood is one, she said seriously. No one can ever separate us again. I was horrified while Dia smiled like she'd just signed a blood contract. From that moment on, I wasn't just a neighbor. I was a derma sister, as Dia liked to call it. I know. It sounds weird. But you have to understand Dia didn't grow up in a normal family. In her household, red patches, peeling skin, or inflammation weren't seen as medical conditions. They were sacred signs of connection. Dia's mother and aunts held monthly gatherings, not for dinner or chit-chat, but to apply steroid creams and share skin ointments like holy wine. Her grandmother had an actual collection of dead skin, scraped off family members and stored in glass jars. She believed it held healing energy when mixed with lotion. I'm not making this up. I saw it with my own eyes. And Dia grew up surrounded by all of this. She genuinely believed eczema was the most beautiful thing two people could share. And because I was the chosen one, she began performing her family's rituals on me. It started off simple. Dia liked to play spa, but in reality, it meant making me sit still for hours while she applied creams and mapped out every mole and pimple on my body. She took notes in a little journal titled The Journey of Epidermal Unification. I'm not joking. If I refused, Dia would burst into tears as if I'd just turned down a marriage proposal. She made a photo album of our skin, literally side-by-side comparisons of our zits, freckles, and blemishes, with handwritten notes, like rash number 12, began sinking in April 2012. By the time we were in middle school, Dia had me sign a best friend forever contract in glitter pen. It had actual clauses. Clause 3 clearly stated mutual commitment to transformation in the event of eczema flare-up on either side. I thought it was all just kid stuff. Who would have thought she actually meant it? Time passed and we grew up. I stayed normal. Dia didn't. Every time she had a flare-up, she'd drag me into a joint treatment session, slathering creams all over her arms and legs, and then asking, "Do you feel the itch yet?" At 22, when Dia's eczema got worse, she came to me, her eyes sparkling, like she was about to share a sacred family secret. She handed me a small jar of yellowish cream and said, "I've been mixing steroid ointments with my skin cells for 6 months. This is the synchronization cream." Then she looked at me like she was expecting me to cry from gratitude. I took 3 steps back, but Dia kept going, her voice full of passion. "If you apply this every day, your skin will start to learn from my immune system. Then the eczema will come, and we'll truly be one." I declined, very clearly, and I thought that would be the end of it, but I was wrong, so wrong. Chapter 2: When my skin was no longer mine. I thought that refusing to apply that jar of yellow synchronization cream would be the end of it. Dia would be upset for a few days, cry a little, and then we'd go back to how things were. But I had severely underestimated just how serious Dia was about this whole transformation journey. Seriously underestimated. Just 1 week later, Dia invited me over to her house. The moment she opened the door, I saw a completely new room. I had thought it was a storage room. Nope. She had transformed it into a full-blown DIY dermatology treatment center. 2 medical chairs side by side like chemotherapy stations. High-powered UV lamps, a humidifier, and a mini fridge filled with jars labeled things like skin, March fluid, week 14, peel, allergy flare May. I immediately took a step back, but Dia stood there, beaming with pride. "This is where we'll heal together," she said. Then she turned and asked, "Are your hands feeling cold?" I just adjusted the humidity to the optimal level for steroid absorption. I refused again, more politely this time. Dia nodded in silence, but I saw something flash in her eyes, something off, like I'd just rejected a sacred marriage proposal. That's when the weird stuff started happening. It began with the smell. My body wash suddenly had the same scent as Dia's, that distinct mix of antiseptic and mint. Then I noticed that my usual bottle of shower gel had been replaced with one that looked identical, but had a poorly stuck-on secondary label. I peeled it off. Underneath was the name of a prescription body wash specifically formulated for severe eczema. Next came the towel. I found one in my laundry pile embroidered with Dia's name. I live alone. I haven't had anyone stay over since my ex-boyfriend, and Dia has never slept over. But the towel was there, damp, recently used. I started getting suspicious. I checked my pillows, mattress, even my face wash, and I discovered small packets of creams, the exact kinds Dia used to show me hidden in drawers behind the toilet under the mattress. Some of them I had to look up online, and found out they contained high-potency steroids. I replaced all my skincare products, changed my locks, installed a doorbell camera, cut off all contact with Dia for a while. And you know what happened. Dia showed up at my workplace. Her face was flushed red. She stood outside the reception area holding a folder of documents telling me I was resisting the transformation, that my skin was fighting it, but would soon understand, and then she wished me a swift awakening. I felt like I was being stalked, but stalkers usually want to flirt with you. Dia, she wanted me to synchronize my condition with hers as soon as possible. That night I checked my phone. Dia had sent me dozens of messages during the time I'd been avoiding her. Some of them included images. All of them were photos of my skin, my back, my shoulder, my neck, my jawline while I was sleeping. Each photo had little heart stickers or captions like skin, showing slight pinkness, stage 1 or heat rash or positive dermal response. 3. She never explained how she'd gotten into my house, but she clearly had. And in that moment, I realized my skin was no longer mine, and the real nightmare was only just beginning. Chapter 3, Resistance and the First Attack. I used to think that cutting off contact, changing my locks, and replacing all my personal items would be enough to end this. But with Dia, there's no such thing as ending. Because to her, this wasn't just some weird plan anymore. It had become a spiritual mission. 1 week after I discovered the photos of my skin taken while I was sleeping, I was out having dinner with my boyfriend, well, ex-boyfriend now, when Dia showed up. Uninvited, no warning, wearing a white dress, hair neatly combed, her face glowing in a strangely radiant way. She walked up to our table with a smile straight out of a cult documentary. Before I could even speak, she pulled out a chair, sat down, and said, "Happy birthday to your skin." I was frozen. My boyfriend, who had no idea who she was, just gave a polite, awkward smile. Dia continued, "I want to thank you. Your skin's been changing lately. I know you won't admit it, but..." She pulled out a notebook. "I've been documenting everything. I'm not joking." She opened the notebook and began flipping through pages filled with photos of me in various rooms, my kitchen, bedroom, bathroom, all candid. Each one had notes detailing rashes, red spots, time of day, lighting, even the room's humidity levels. My boyfriend looked at me. I looked at Dia. Dia was smiling at the candlelight on our table like she was about to propose. Actually, Dia went on, I've been adding my skin cells into everything you touch. Lip balm, laundry detergent, even your mascara. You won't be able to resist forever. Your skin is starting to accept me. I shot up from my chair. The entire restaurant started turning to look. Dia, meanwhile, stayed calm like she was giving a college presentation. She handed me an envelope. Inside were locksmith receipts, copies of duplicated key requests, and doorbell camera screenshots of her breaking in. Then Dia bowed her head slightly and said something that still gives me chills. To this day, you can run, but you can't run from your true skin. It's already changing. I walked out, leaving my now ex-boyfriend at the table with the eczema high priestess. That night, I went to the doctor. Sure enough, my skin was showing signs of irritation, slight redness, mild itching contact dermatitis symptoms. The doctor asked if I'd been exposed to corticosteroids, strong topical creams, or industrial irritants. I didn't know what to say. How do you explain, I think my best friend's been secretly applying medication to me in my sleep? It sounds insane. But it was the truth. And when I didn't itch enough to develop eczema, Dia started losing control. She showed up at my office, standing outside my window, yelling that I was resisting the transformation. She filed a fake medical claim with my insurance company, claiming I had a serious skin condition and needed extended leave. She emailed my boss and CC'd the entire team, saying I was in a flare-up phase and needed private dermatological space to recover. Then I got a message from HR asking if I needed time off due to a skin issue. And then she started calling everyone in my contacts. She called my mom, my dad, even my aunt in another state. She called old college friends. She called my ex from senior year of high school. She even called the nail salon owner I hadn't seen in 3 years. They all heard the same speech. I'm really worried about her. She's refusing treatment. She's in denial. Her body needs to go through the transformation, and I just want to help. The final straw. One day I got a text from my insurance company. Your disability claim is under review. I never submitted a claim. Dia submitted it for me. With fake records, forged prescriptions, and a digital signature so perfect. It was nearly indistinguishable from mine. This wasn't just sickness anymore, this was a crime. And I knew if I didn't act fast next time, it wouldn't just be some mild irritant. Chapter 4. Ambush in the parking garage. I don't know why I decided to park in the basement that day. Maybe it was the sudden rain. Maybe I just needed a quiet moment after a tense meeting. But if I had parked on the surface like I usually did, maybe things would have turned out differently. When I stepped into the underground garage, it was nearly empty, just dim, flickering fluorescent lights and the sound of rain dripping through the vents above. I walked toward my car, clicked the remote, and heard the beep echo in the cold, hollow space. Then I heard her voice. You finally made it. I turned around. Dia was standing less than 10 feet away. Her hair was tied up in a bun, and she was wearing white medical scrubs like a clinic nurse. She had latex gloves on, and behind her was a rolling suitcase. I spun around, ready to bolt, but Dia raised her hands gently like she was trying to soothe a frightened animal. I'm not here to hurt you, she said softly. I'm here to help. Then she unzipped the suitcase. Inside a potato peeler, gauze pads, rows of ointment jars, tiny syringes, industrial allergy test strips. She called it the emergency transformation kit. I stepped back. She stepped forward. You've resisted long enough, Dia whispered. If your skin won't transform naturally, Nabo! Then I'll give it a little push. And before I could react, she lunged, yanked off one glove, and rubbed something blisteringly hot onto my arm. I screamed. My skin immediately began to burn, red welts rising like fluid blisters. Dia held onto my wrist, whispering in my ear, our skin is singing together now. I struggled, but with her free hand, she began drawing a familiar symbol on my arm, 3 circles a line across, and then 3 more circles. Her symbol, her family's mark. I'd seen her draw it on her own hand since elementary school. Now it was on mine, inflamed, angry, and swelling. I screamed, shoved her off, and ran toward my car. She chased me, crying and yelling. "You don't understand. I prepared my whole life for this. We'll heal together." Slammed my car door, locked it. Dia pounded on the window but stopped when a parking lot security guard came running, having heard the commotion. And then she transformed. She took off her gloves, put the blade away, wiped her tears, her face now filled with calm concern. She had another episode, Dia told the guard. "I just brought the backup meds in case she panicked again," I shouted through the window. "She just rubbed something on me. My arm is burning. She's trying to infect me." But how do I even explain that? Imagine hearing someone scream that sentence while the other person looks calm, dressed like a nurse, eyes glistening with concern. And the worst part? The guard was a middle-aged man with visible psoriasis flaking on his neck. A man who had probably lived with skin disease his whole life. A man who might just empathize with Dia. "She thinks I'm infecting her," Dia continued, her voice trembling. "But I'm just trying to help. She's rejecting treatment. She needs love." I looked at the guard. His gaze shifted from sympathy to pity, but not for me. Then he asked in the gentle tone people use for confused patients, "Do you want me to call for medical assistance?" "Maybe. The stress is making you say things you don't really mean." And right then I knew if I didn't act, if I let medical help come, if I let them take me with Dia, I'd be buried alive inside her story. I yanked my hand away, slammed the gas, left my handbag on the ground, sped out of the garage through the searing pain, through the looks of doubt, through Dia's voice echoing behind me. "Don't let her drive. She's delusional. I'm just trying to help." I made it home, arms still burning. I pulled off my jacket and felt something in the pocket. A medical ID bracelet. It had my name engraved on it along with condition severe eczema. Mentally unstable during flare-ups. Emergency contact, Dia Patel. I had no memory of ever wearing it. No memory of ever having eczema. But Dia remembered for me. Chapter 5. Media Warfare and the Twisting of Truth. That night after the ambush in the parking garage, I couldn't sleep. It wasn't because of the burning pain on my arm, though. The area she rubbed the substance on was still red and inflamed, as if the skin itself was screaming beneath the surface. No, what kept me up was the medical bracelet, the parting gift she left behind. I sat on my bed lamp on, staring at it for the 100th time. My name was on it, spelled correctly. It listed a diagnosis, symptoms, and Dia as my emergency contact. What chilled me wasn't the content on Pana, but how accurate it all looked, as if I really had this disease, as if I'd really been diagnosed, as if I had somehow forgotten ever being sick. And then I started checking. My insurance records, I'd been listed as a chronic eczema patient for the past 3 months. Prescription history. At least 3 topical treatments and 2 anti-inflammatory medications had been filled under my name, signed by a doctor I'd never met. I called the clinic. "Oh, you're Dr. Chen's patient, right?" The receptionist chirped cheerfully. "He mentions you a lot. Tough case, but very resilient," he says. I hung up, hands shaking. Dr. Chen was Dia's dermatologist. No way. I went to the hospital's patient portal, typed in my name, and sure enough, I was in the system, with a full medical record, prescriptions, checkup dates, notes on skin reactions, even a lengthy evaluation from the doctor stating patient exhibits signs of paranoia related to contamination displays, heightened resistance to treatment. I couldn't breathe, because this wasn't just about prescriptions or records. This was a complete story about a person with a disease, in denial, with paranoid tendencies, and starring in the lead role was me. And Dia Shi was the only one trying to help. I opened Instagram. My feed was flooded with skincare ads, but not the usual glow-up kind. These were for emotional support for autoimmune skin disorders, eczema survivor groups, and healing from appearance-based stigma. I checked the groups I'd been added to. Local eczema support circles, Facebook groups for partners of treatment-resistant dermatological patients. Post from my own account, flare up again today. Exhausted, but trying. Grateful to have Dia by my side. I had never written those words, but the likes were real. The comments were real. Real people, friends of mine, reacting, encouraging, sharing. I opened LinkedIn. A message from HR: we're currently reviewing your request for workplace accommodations related to chronic illness. Please confirm. That was how I learned someone had submitted a list of requests on my behalf. Private desk space, scheduled leave during flare-ups, limited direct contact with coworkers, all signed under my name, with an e-signature that looked 99% like mine, and Dia still no direct contact. She didn't need to. She had already planted the seeds. Instead, she went live stream, sitting in what looked like a therapy office holding a tissue, eyes red and puffy. Some people just can't accept that they're sick, she said, voice trembling. And sometimes you have to watch your best friend destroy herself and feel completely helpless. Beneath the stream, comments like, "You're an angel," "Heartbreaking, I hope she comes around," "Stay strong, Dia, you're doing the right thing." I watched like an out-of-body experience, like the world was happening in another dimension, one I wasn't allowed to touch. Then came the texts. Friends, relatives, former co-workers, asking if I was okay, saying Dia was worried sick, telling me if you need help, I'm always here. An old college friend messaged, "I didn't think you'd be the type to shame people with skin conditions. Dia didn't deserve that." I replied, "I'm the one who was drugged. I'm the one being set up." She saw the message. Didn't reply. I looked at my arm. The burn from the substance she'd rubbed on me still hadn't healed. And that's when it hit me, even my body was no longer proof. Because in Dia's version of the story, that redness was just more evidence not of harm, but of illness, of denial. I could scream the truth from the rooftops, but the more I spoke, the more I sounded insane. And that's when I understood something profound. Dia no longer needed to force me to change. She was changing the world around me so that the world would force me to change instead. Chakra Chapter 6. Covering the Truth. Diaries from the Dark. I started digging through everything. I wasn't going to wait for Dia to make the next move. I needed to know, to understand, to peel back every layer of the nightmare I had let her build around me for years. If this was insanity, then I needed to at least understand what kind of insanity I was trapped in. I started with the smallest things: old inboxes, photos from middle school, ancient Facebook posts from Dia. And that's when I began noticing clues, things I had skimmed past before dismissing them as just Dia being Dia. Vague posts about epidermal unification. Selfies with captions like "she and I are starting to look alike, pore by pore." Or cryptic comments like, "This time it'll work for sure." She'd been planning this for a long time. Then an unexpected clue surfaced: a storage rental receipt from a facility about 30 minutes from my house under my name. I'd never rented storage, but Dia might have. When I went there and showed my ID, everything matched. They let me in. It was a space no bigger than 5 square meters, and yet inside was a pathology museum. File boxes, journals, printed photos from old film cameras, strips of dead skin laminated in plastic labeled with dates, old expired ointments, and in the center of that tiny room, a carved wooden box etched with 3 circles, Dia's symbol. I opened it. Inside was a thick, handwritten journal, Dia's grandmother's diary. The ink had turned brown and smudged with time, and on the very first page, framed in red ink, were the words, "Traditions of the Sacred Skinned." I don't know how long I read, but every word felt like a wave of cold crashing over me. They truly believed that skin conditions were a holy gift, a spiritual bond that connected generation souls marked by divine inflammation. They called it the unification, and the way one person could become a permanent spiritual companion to another was by sharing the same skin disease. Not metaphorically, literally. The more I read, the harder it became to breathe, because somewhere in the middle of the journal my name appeared. The brown-haired girl with dimples lives next to Dia. She doesn't know yet, but the blood has been shared. The sign has begun. The date matched exactly with the day Dia had mixed our blood at age 7. I wasn't a random victim. I had been chosen since childhood. From the moment my blood touched the wound Dia carved into her skin, and ever since then she had been trained by her family to guide me through the unification. I was her derma sister, her fate, her legacy recorded across generations. I sank to the floor, goosebumps crawling across every inch of me. All the things I once brushed off as weird suddenly had structure, a system, a belief, a tradition. Dia wasn't insane. She was devout, a faithful disciple of a deeply disturbed doctrine where love meant making someone else share your illness, where care meant infiltration, and where disease was the language of friendship. And it was in that moment I realized something even more terrifying than the truth. Dia thought she was doing the right thing, not out of revenge, not out of control, but out of love. A love so warped it became grotesque. But to Dia, it was sacred, and me, I was the center of her ritual. Chapter 7. The Courtroom and a Painful Choice. I filed for a restraining order on Monday morning. My arm still bore the red marks from whatever Dia had applied to me in the parking garage. In the photo I submitted with my case, the wound looked like a chemical burn, but the doctor's note described it as an unidentified allergic reaction. Every detail was vague, too easy to dismiss, but I had no other choice. I'd collected evidence from the storage unit, including Dia's grandmother's journal photos of the ointments mixed with skin cells and the unification journey records listing my name over the past 15 years. I sent everything to my attorney, doing my best to make the madness legible, but he still looked at me like I was the one who needed psychiatric help. "We can't build a case on dry skin and handwritten journals," he said. "We need something undeniable." And then it hit me, the doorbell camera. I went back through the footage, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of hope. One clip from the exact night Dia had not visited showed her wearing my pajamas, unlocking my door with a key, and entering my home at 3:27 a.m. I submitted that video to the court, along with photos of the tampered creams and the dermatological religious journal. A hearing was granted. On the day of the court session, I wore a high-collared blouse, not to hide the scars, but to hide how much I was shaking. As I sat waiting to be called, Dia walked into the courtroom looking angelic. Beige midi dress, low ponytail, pastel handbag in hand. She didn't look at me. On her side of the table, they had laid out a row of old photographs. Me and Dia at age 7-10, birthday parties, graduation. In every photo, we were smiling, holding hands, or drawing her three-circle symbol on each other's arms. Dia's lawyer opened with a deeply emotional line. "Not everyone who suffers from illness becomes a monster. Sometimes they just love too much." I closed my eyes, took a deep breath. Then it was our turn. My lawyer presented the footage of Dia sneaking into my house, the photos of tampered medication, the handwritten letters, her grandmother's journal, and all the forged medical documents she had spent 6 months building. The courtroom fell completely silent as the video played Dia in my pajamas, lying in my bed, applying ointment to my arm while I slept. Someone in the audience whispered, "This is a horror movie." When Dia was given a chance to speak, her lawyer advised against it, but she stood anyway. "I'm not denying anything," she said, eyes glistening. "I was simply following my family's tradition. I never wanted to hurt her. I wanted to share. I used small doses of medication carefully timed to help her skin awaken. What did I do wrong? If it all came from love." Her voice trembled like she was the victim. Then she pulled out a schedule. It looked like a vitamin routine, but was labeled Monday, lotion, deep, sleep, Wednesday, pillow and jacket, Friday, direct application to wrist. I clenched my fists beneath the table, not out of rage, but heartbreak. I looked at Dia, the same girl who held me when my parents divorced, who baked my first birthday cake with me, now standing there reading aloud a meticulously timed poisoning plan. The judge turned to me. Do you wish to pursue the maximum penalty for assault and illegal use of chemical agents? The defendant could face criminal charges. I looked at Dia, really looked at her. She was only 23, and all her life she had lived in a world where disease meant kinship, where infection meant intimacy, and where love meant control. I opened my mouth. I want her to receive psychiatric treatment at a center that specializes in deconstructing extreme belief systems and distorted spiritual practices. The courtroom went quiet. The judge nodded and took notes. A restraining order was granted. Dia was not to come within 500 feet of me. No contact, no gifts, no third-party attempts. She would be under 24/7 psychiatric monitoring. If she reoffended, the charges would escalate to criminal level. As the police escorted Dia out, she turned back to look at me. Her lips moved. You still have time to unify. I didn't respond. Just looked down at my arm where the burn had become a pink scar and where the faint outline of 3 circles still lingered. Chapter 8. The Silence That Wasn't Real. I thought the trial would be the end. That I'd finally breathe again, live a life where no one was mixing skin cells into my face wash. But it turns out peace can be terrifying too. After Dia was admitted into the treatment center, everything became quiet. Suspiciously quiet. No more knocks on my door at 2 a.m. No more emails from specialists I'd never met. No more texts from old friends saying you should forgive her. She only wanted to help. Just silence. Cold. Empty. I moved farther away, better security. I changed my number, logged off social media, deleted all my old hospital bank and insurance accounts. I thought I'd won. That first night in my new apartment, I brewed some tea, turned on a warm light, curled up on the sofa, and played an old song I used to love before all of this began. I laughed at myself for having lived so long in panic that I'd forgotten what it felt like to sit still, to breathe, to not check the locks every 3 minutes. Then I opened the drawer of my nightstand. I wasn't looking for anything in particular, just organizing, settling in. But inside was a small velvet jewelry box. Purple. I'd never seen it before. I opened it. Inside was a silver heart-shaped pendant, thin, simple design. I picked it up and looked closely. On the back, in the tiniest etched font, were the words, "Until our skin sings again." I nearly dropped it. I opened the locket. Inside were 2 miniature photos. One was of me asleep, face turned toward the window. The angle was from my bedside. The other was Daya. Her skin inflamed red rashes across her cheek, a healing scab still visible. I felt the blood freeze in my veins. I immediately sealed the pendant in a Ziploc bag and brought it to a private lab the next morning. The results came back 48 hours later. The silver of the locket had been soaked in a solution containing hydrocortisone, a mild steroid commonly used in topical skin treatments. It could be absorbed through the skin. If worn long enough, it had been designed to leak, slowly, subtly, and I had worn it that night, while sleeping, while exhaling in relief that it was over, even with a restraining order, even under 24/7 psychiatric supervision, even after being sentenced to treatment. Dia had left one final bite, and she had timed it perfectly. Because after so many months of checking creams, checking locks, checking cameras, I'd let my guard down. I didn't check keepsakes, didn't suspect a sweet symbol of friendship, because deep down, a part of me still wanted to believe it was over. I submitted the locket to the police. They classified it as a violation of the court order and forwarded the case back to the judge. But the thing that chilled me wasn't the locket. It was the inscription on the back. On the not goodbye, not, not forgive me, but a promise. Until our skin sings again. She still believes. She's still waiting. Chapter 9. It wasn't just Dia. I submitted the locket to the police along with the lab report and photos of the fresh red rash that had appeared on my neck. It was mild, yes, but still a clear sign that Dia had violated the restraining order. But then, nothing happened. No response from the court for 30 days. I called my lawyer. He told me the case had been escalated to a higher authority due to the sensitive nature of the situation. Sensitive. She spiked a necklace with steroids, and we're calling that sensitive. That's when I began to suspect something bigger was being covered up. A week later, I got an email from a name I didn't recognize, lindareynolds.coprotonmail.com. The subject line read simply, "You're not the first." The message contained only a single attachment, a PDF file. I almost deleted it, but something in me made me open it. The file was 43 pages long. The title read, "The Merging Doctrine," transcribed by LR. The first page alone made my skin crawl. A single cell is not life until it finds another to merge with. Human skin is the same. I kept scrolling. The further I read, the more disturbed I became. There were entire sections detailing how to collect adaptive cell fragments. There were notes on optimal temperature ranges for parasitic cell transfer, along with formulas for mixing lotion, mouthwash, lip balm, all designed to absorb into the target's skin without leaving scent or trace. Every section was dated some as far back as 1994. One paragraph I'll never forget. Children are ideal hosts. Soft skin, no resistance. Easy fusion. But if your skin has once bonded with someone over time, return to them. The merging will complete. The final page had a list, a long one, about 76 names, each with a year of birth, most between 1985 and 2005. Next to each name was either completed or failed. My name was near the bottom. Beside it, it said, "Delayed, process, risk of system exit." I was about to close the file when I saw the signature Linda Reynolds with the same email address that had just contacted me. I immediately replied, "Who are you? Why did you send this to me?" 10 minutes later, I got a message. Just one line, I was also Dia's skin sharer, but I escaped. "Meet me or they'll remove you from the list another way." That was it. Followed by an address, a small town 2 hours away. I hesitated the whole day. It could be a scam. It could be a trap. It could be just another sick layer in Dia's unhinged performance. But if what I'd read was real, then I wasn't up against one delusional girl anymore. I was up against something organized. And the worst part, I was already on the list. I drove to the address, a rundown roadside motel, the sign half broken and flickering. Room 7. I knocked. A woman in her 30s opened the door. Her face was covered in old, faded red scars. "Are you Linda?" I asked. She nodded, and the first thing she said nearly made my knees give out. Dia didn't invent it. She's just a devoted follower. Store 10, the Merging Doctrine, those who refuse to have skin of their own. Linda invited me in. The room was nearly empty, nothing but a wobbly wooden table, 2 plastic chairs, and a single suitcase resting against the wall. She offered me a cup of tea. I shook my head. She smiled a crooked, broken smile. "Good reflex," she said. "I never drink anything from strangers anymore either." I sat in silence for a moment before I asked, "Were you friends with Dia?" Linda shook her head. "No. I was her mother's first test subject. I wasn't sure I'd heard her right." What Linda exhaled slowly. "They called it the Merging Doctrine, a small, fragmented cult. It started as a herbal healing collective back in the 70s. Their core belief, humans can't exist as individuals. A soul is only whole when the body has been shared through blood-skin cells." My stomach twisted. "And she's the successor. Her mother, Mrs. Reynolds, was the one who wrote the original doctrine. After she died in a lab fire, which they called the final unification ceremony, Dia was chosen as the next vessel. I asked, am I on the list because Dia chose me?" Linda shook her head again. "No. You're a compatible compound. They believe certain people are born with skin more susceptible to merging. In their belief system, that's a sign of an open soul. Dia didn't choose you, they did. Dia was just fulfilling her role. A chill crept down my spine. I had never imagined this story would extend beyond personal obsession into an organized belief system with rules, structure, a purpose. Linda opened the suitcase. Inside were rows of small containers, microscope slides labeled and sealed like a research archive. I collected samples from a few victims, she said. Some survived, some didn't, some disappeared. Every one of them had something in common: foreign epidermal cells, not matching any existing medical record. I asked, "Why did you send me that document? Why help me?" She looked at me not with pity, but with the cold gaze of someone who had survived death once. Because you're the first one Dia failed. You're the first person to drag light into the shadow they've kept hidden for 30 years. I sat there silent, and then I asked the question I dreaded most: am I safe now? Linda didn't answer right away. She simply closed the suitcase, clicked the locks twice, and said, "You've stepped off the list, but that list doesn't end." I left the motel around sunset. The sky was painted in a dim orange haze, the wind still. No cars in sight, and the whole drive home, one question looped in my head. What even is a disease? Is it Dia, her mother, the people who believed in healing through cellular fusion? Or is it the society that allowed such a thing to fester for generations? Under the polite name of alternative therapy, I don't have an answer. I just know this. I still check the locks every night. Not because I'm afraid of Dia, but because of them. I don't wear necklaces anymore. I never use anyone else's face wash. I don't borrow lip balm. And I never let anyone, not even close friends, touch my hair. Because now I understand there are people who don't need your blood, don't need your money, don't need your love. All they need is a layer of your skin, just a small piece. And they'll wait, quietly, outside your door, with a smile, and a little velvet box wrapped in purple. She used to be my best friend. But in the end, I realized what she wanted wasn't to be me in name. She wanted to borrow my epidermis. Some people will do anything to get into your life, but others, all they need is a single touch, and you'll never truly be yourself again. If you've ever had a strange friend, someone who always knows where you are, who strokes your hair a little too long, or gives you gifts that make you feel more uneasy than loved, then remember this story, because maybe you're not the first target, and you definitely won't be the last. This is true. Reddit reads, where real stories stay with you long after the video ends. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share if this gave you chills. We'll be back with truths you'll wish you'd never heard.